Today we're diving into the real life example of the anxious-avoidant trap in attachment theory, one you might seen blowing up all over the For You page if you're into Love Island. But if not, don't worry, I'm going to explain it in a way that it makes also sense for you if you're not watching Love Island. So Dejon and Megan from Love Island UK 2025, they were attached at the hip from day one, always talking about being the best couple, the only boyfriend and girlfriend couple on that show, at least until now. I haven't watched the finale yet. And they were dumped before the finale. And yet they were always arguing. He receives lots of negative comments online. And so many viewers kept saying Meg is clearly more into him than he's into her. Why is he always so defensive? Why is she defending him all the time as well? And when I tell you this couple is a textbook anxious-avoidant dynamic, I really mean textbook. And today I'm going to break down into why they're so drawn to each other, the trap, really what is the relationship cycle here, and really signs of them, how they really could break free from this cycle. Because in truth, the pattern isn't just about reality TV. There's this same pattern playing out in DMs or voice messages between you and your maybe best friend or your romantic relationships, and at home for you as well. Plus, in the end, I'll touch on some of the comments, how D apparently is a narcissist. That is key. Before you start labeling people as being a narcissist, you want to really listen to this part as well. By the way, I'm Yula. Welcome to the Anxious to Secure podcast. I used to have an anxious attachment style. Now I have created an earned secure attachment style, and I'm now thriving in my relationship with my avoidant attached partner, while he became more secure over time, slowly, much slower because he hasn't done the active work. It's really important to understand what is the anxious-avoidant relationship cycle and what you can do in your relationship to really break free from this. Little disclaimer, this is a safe space, not a space for hate. I've seen so much hate online, and I'm not a fan of this. No matter if you like Dejon or if he apparently is a red flag or even the relationship, I don't want you to jump on my YouTube comments and just, attack him or his character. I know Dejon has received lots of criticism online, and while we're diving into real relationship dynamics, this episode is not about blaming or shaming anyone. This is more about awareness, about attachment theory, about patterns, and what could be underneath all of this. And then really what you can do if you are in the same pattern, how you can spot these signs, but mostly how you can empower yourself to keep yourself emotionally and physically, of course, safe. So please keep this in mind. Be kind and curious and constructive, and let's grow together and not tear anyone apart or down. Disclaimer, I'm not a therapist or doctor. This content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to diagnose, treat, or heal any mental health condition. If you're in an abusive relationship or dealing with severe mental health challenges, always seek professional advice. So let's start a little bit with what we actually saw. Megan was all in for Dejon. I think very early on attached, maybe even couple up from day one. She brushed off red flags right away, defending their relationship all the time, even when others were calling it out. While Dejon had turned a lot of times. Yes, they were still dating, and they were even in the official dating stage. They were just getting to know each other, but there were still a lot of things that I personally would have not accepted if I would have started dating someone. And I would have eventually said, you know what, either you're all in for me and we'll be exclusive, but what's going on here? Anyways, his head turned a lot, and he flirted, and he joked about threesomes with other girls, and he kissed other girls, and Megan brought it up. He then either shut it down when she brought it up, or deflected, or got very defensive. And yet those two stayed together until the end, until they were dumped together as a couple. So even Megan's family started to notice a few things here, like, do you not even laugh together? Do you even have banter? And they weren't seeing her light up or feel relaxed like she would usually be maybe in other relationships or on her own. And instead, she whispered secretly to her mom when she arrived on the family day, "Be careful what you say to him. I have to deal with him later." And that is a huge red flag, by the way. She was putting on a smile on when she was saying that, but underneath that, that is not a good sign if you have to warn your mom what you say in front of him. That really leans towards narcissistic behavior, where you have to walk really so much on eggshells around your partner that you're scared later on that you have to deal with the consequences. This is really dangerous. So that's working on eggshells, that's fear of conflict, and that's definitely huge anxious attachment. So she wasn't just in love, she was really just in survival energy. So she even brought up the same concerns over and over again, because when you actually attach, you become hyper vigilant of everything in the relationship. You notice the tone shifts and the silences and emotional micro moments, not just the huge things they do in their behaviors. So it looks like you are just wired to pick up on these threats. And I used to be this as well. And now I'm much more regulated. So I can, even if I'm still hypervigilant, sometimes I can regulate myself and know not to take things personal, because I know I'm with a safe partner, with a secure partner who only chooses me. However, in their relationship, it might be not even that case. I would even not even say that, yeah, there are too many red flags in my eyes, but let me not jump to conclusions yet. Anyway, so, but the more, if you keep bringing things up, no matter if you're with D or with a very secure partner, eventually that will push any person away. And if you are with an avoidant attached partner, that definitely triggers them more and more. And that's why then he was also shutting down more and more. And then the cycle continues. The more someone that pushes and negotiates and brings things up, the other person, triggers, being triggered more as well, and shuts down. So let's talk about the attachment styles a little bit more in detail. So I believe Megan shows more anxious attachment signs and D shows more avoidant attachment signs. And this combo is this intensive, magnetic, combo of very toxic energy, this push and pull, and always turning into conflict in the end. And here are some signs why I think Megan might be anxiously attached, or at least has tendencies. For example, she's falling very fast from day one. She was only all eyes on him. So being emotionally invested before there's even real commitment, or before she even actually knows who he is. So you can't really be in love with someone if you don't know this person yet. So you're falling way ahead and you're attached too fast before you know this person, before you can actually build trust. Because trust is earned. You're needing a lot of reassurance, of course, because you feel emotionally very unsafe and you're hoping with the other person to make you feel safe and reassured. And the less they give it to you, the more you chase them. And that kind of, we saw that as well on the show. So you're staying after multiple breaches of trust as well, hoping love will fix it, hoping eventually he will change and he will reassure you and everything will be okay. She was walking on eggshells, as mentioned, struggling to let go when something feels off, or when there were actually facts given already, when she actually noticed, hey, this was a boundary crossed. His head was turned too many times. He lied to me. He didn't mention certain things when they were happening. And she did not set boundaries. She did not walk away way too many times. Because these were signs of, she has an abandonment fear and a rejection fear. That means she's still staying in a relationship even though it doesn't feel healthy, it doesn't feel like aligned with her true values, right? But if you have a fear of being abandoned, you rather cling onto something even though it's not great. And remember when Megan kept saying, we're fine, and when they were clearly were not fine, when she just cried her eyes out like a night before and then pretending we're happy. And that's not confidence, that's really attachment anxiety dressed up as like positivity. That's toxic positivity. So an avoidant attachment, why do I think D shows signs of an avoidant attachment style? It's because he's emotionally distancing himself, especially when he feels overwhelmed or when he's triggered. He's on the surface level quite charming, but then he often gets very defensive and he shuts down, and gives her a little bit of a silent treatment occasionally, making things about him when Megan, for example, expresses her needs or her emotions and talks to him about certain things. So that's very deflective and sometimes a little bit gaslighting as well. Her gaslighting are not typical signs of an avoidant attachment style. That's more narcissistic tendencies. But I wanted to bring this up here as well because there was a huge red flag of him. Other things he was doing is he was struggling to validate her emotions. When she came up to him and really expressed her worries and her thoughts, he was not able to say, hey, you know what? I hear you. I feel that. That really sucks. I'm sorry. Here's what I can do better going forward. But this is how I feel as well. This is why I did it. And this is what I felt. Straight away, he went into thinking about himself, feeling attacked and feeling vulnerable and overwhelmed. And he always felt an attacked versus of validating her emotions as well. Only though, in the end, after the arguments and the conflict and things have calmed a few hours later or days later, I can't tell because it was on TV. Eventually, he did then reassured her and validated her and also took accountability. So I have to say this. So if he would be a pure narcissist, they would not take accountability. It was all about control. But because he did eventually take accountability for some of his parts and did validate her, in the end, these are more signs that he's more avoidant attached. A few other things why I think he's avoidant attached was because he's more fearing emotional closeness. So as soon, she was a little bit more kind of hoping for commitment because she was really much on him right away. It could have added a pressure for him to close things off or to be exclusive or be a partner, be a couple quite quickly. So maybe that's why he was kind of seeking more emotional freedom, but also having his head turned by exploring other options. And he's also struggling to be vulnerable with his emotions, also a huge sign that he's more avoidant attached. Then he has this huge pressure to perform for cameras, as we've all seen, right? The words like smile for the cameras, were really things that made us all chill, I think, watching it, because that's something when you're telling someone to pretend just because you're being watched, that's your huge red flag. But I want to point out, in my point of view, it's not because he's evil or he's trying to manipulate Megan or trying to tell her what to do. It's really about his own shame. It's because he's really emotionally unavailable and he's not mature enough, and he should care through performance, through not emotional depth. And when Megan asked for connection, he got more defensive and shut down. And that's more his nervous system being on freeze mode and sometimes even on flight mode when he was walking away from situations. So let's talk about the core wounds of the attachment styles, of what's going on underneath here as well. To simplify it, if you never heard about attachment styles, they're basically how your nervous system reacts in your close relationships, especially based on early experiences. Also in friendships and with your colleagues and every other interaction with people, but especially in your romantic relationships. And there are the 4 types, but for now we only focus on anxious and avoidant. So Megan feeling disconnected and really wants connection, so she is in a lot of Dejon space, needing frequent reassurance, overanalyzing everything, tiny behaviors, tolerating behaviors that hurt because she's scared of being left. And her core wound might be, I'm not good enough to be fully chosen. And maybe she has learned somehow in her childhood that if I'm good, kind, or quiet enough, they will stay and I'm safe. And the avoidant attachment styles, so he's showing signs of pulling away when things get too emotional or getting defensive when criticized, avoiding hard conversations, acting charming to keep things light instead of vulnerable. And his core wound might be more, if I let someone too close, or maybe they even see who I truly am, I'll lose control or be judged, and then I'll feel shame. So he learned closeness equals pressure and emotions equal danger. So he was hiding of who he truly was. That's why he was putting on this facade and, smile at the cameras. And if you put these two together, the anxious person, Megan kind of tries to tell me, choose me, reassure me, be there for me, while D more says, you're overwhelming me. And then he shuts down, and then she panics more, and then he distances himself more, and then the loop gets worse and worse. So let's talk about the cycle that's happening here between the two of them. So let's say Megan gets closer and then D pulls away or shuts down. So then Megan, she like panics and overthinks things and maybe, seeks closeness again, which you often can say she then clings harder in air quotes. And then maybe he panics and feels overwhelmed and then he has to flirt with other people and detach and he does things that are absolutely not okay in the situation if you're dating or if you're already becoming something more than this. So then she overthinks even more and then she tries to over explain or over apologize and is much more in this active energy while he's more shutting down and more in this deactivating energy. And then he gets more annoyed and he shuts down and she then gets even more activated. And eventually they temporarily make up and pretend everything is fine. It wasn't an argument. It was just like, a little kerfuffle. And then the next trigger happens and the same thing repeats itself. And this is very typical anxious avoidant dynamic, the cycle, the trap, what we call this. And it sounds a little bit similar for you, maybe not in an extreme version like this, but maybe what is your partner is a little bit silent, maybe stressed out, and you just want closeness or validation and you don't get it from your partner. It doesn't mean they're a terrible person, but maybe it just means you both have wounds and you both need to work on yourselves. So anyway, and no matter how hot this chemistry is, no matter how much you think you're in love with each other, this loop will burn out eventually. It will get very exhausting and it will also turn physically. You don't just have headaches, but you might have extreme migraines. It might turn into chronic migraines, how it did for me. And when the viewers keep saying, Megan's blind and why she keep defending Dee, they felt really sorry for her and that she should run and she deserves better. It's easier to say from the outside perspective, but we know so many women, I think, as well, who are extremely strong, independent, but as soon as they fall in love with someone, in a relationship with someone, they completely lose themselves in the relationship. And that's really the power of attachment, right? When you're in this survival energy, because it feels so familiar from what you're used to when you were little. But anyway, this is a whole other topic, why we are all so attached to each other. Here's something important, you need to know. This isn't just about being more into someone. This is about emotionally unsafe. It's about trying to control closeness to soothe old abandonment wounds. So she wasn't desperate or she wasn't scared of losing someone who sometimes made her special and sometimes made her feel invisible. That is just this old hot and cold dynamic. It's addictive. The reason why it's so addictive is because it mimics old early attachment trauma from her childhood. And in the next episode, I will go more into detail on how and why we're attached to someone, even though we know they're a red flag, and how to really, understand this dynamic and then how we can move away from this. But now I want to actually give you steps on how to break this anxious avoidance cycle. Again, with the example of if I were Megan or if I were Dejon, to really, heal and to empower yourself. Step 0 is really stop pretending that everything is fine. So many times it was said, oh, it was just an argument, it's just a little disagreement, we're happy, we're good now, we're a very strong couple, we are the best couple on Love Island, and that's just how we talk to each other. I would never break up with him. But you can feel there was something off and they're not fully happy. They're not fulfilled. There's too many arguments, too much happening over and over again. They're arguing over the same things again. And they're feeling both misunderstood and hurt. So, it's not normal to walk on eggshells and smile and pretend just for people or for the cameras, or if you're even if you're in a restaurant and if you're at a friend's party and your partner would tell you, or just smile and just pretend, that's not a good place to be. So the first step is really to be honest to yourself. It's like, hey, you know what? We argue a lot. And that is not just a surface level thing. It really hurts. We argue a lot and I would love this to change. How can we be more of a team? Acknowledging the pattern and then acknowledging the hurt as well. Or like we keep brushing things off instead of looking deeper. This has to stop. Can we make this work somehow? Can we talk about this? Relationships should have conflict and it's normal. But if you're arguing constantly in the first 6 weeks already of your relationship, even if you're spending all day together like they do on the show, that is not just a bump, that's a huge pattern. So, and then step 1 is name the pattern that you're noticing. And I don't mean just vague statements. I mean, go as much into detail as you like. Like say, we don't communicate well, or he shuts down, or she nags. Go a little bit more specific. Like I get triggered when I feel unwanted, like when he flirts with other girls. Then I ask for reassurance, but he either deflects or downplays it. That makes me feel worse. Eventually, we both pretend we're fine, but I'm still anxious and he's still distant underneath. And this is the loop. And if you don't name it, you can't break it. And you can summarize it like, one of us seeks more closeness and the other one shuts down. And then we both pretend everything is fine and there's nothing going on. So step 2 and really how to break this is taking accountability for your side of the street. You can't control or force or change your partner. You can only focus on what you can do in the situation. So take really radical ownership for your thoughts and your feelings and your actions and how these will lead to your results. So if you're Megan, perhaps ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I stop overgiving and just state what I truly need and then detaching from the outcome? Or where am I abandoning myself to get closeness? If you're more like Dejon, ask yourself, why does it feel safer to joke or pull away and to be defensive rather than just say how I feel and to allow myself to be a little bit more vulnerable? What am I protecting myself from when I shut down? And step 3 is doing the inner work. Instead of spiraling after your partner acts distant, maybe go and journal about your feelings and breathe and slow down. Regulate your emotions first before you go to your partner so they can soothe you and validate you. You don't have to fix it in the moment. Ground yourself before you respond. Or instead of begging for reassurance, ask yourself, have they really earned my trust? Can I give the reassurance to myself I'm seeking from my partner? What words would I love to hear from my best friend or my mom or from my partner right now? And how can I give this to myself? Through journaling, through self-talk. And instead of hoping he'll eventually prove he's in it for real, maybe try, what boundary do I need to set today to feel proud of myself? For example, Megan could have said also, this makes me feel uncomfortable. If this keeps happening, I need to take space and really think about how many times I'm willing to tolerate this again. For example, how many times I'm going to tolerate when he flirts with other women or his head turning or having flirty chats. How long can I accept this and do I want to tolerate this until I'm able to move on and, break this off? Because knowing your limits beforehand helps you to follow through instead of just getting stuck and making excuses for your partner and your relationship. Otherwise, you teach others what they can do to you and how you want to be treated, especially if your boundaries are loose and you lose only yourself and your own self-respect. And if your partner tells you to smile and pretend, whether you're sitting at a fire pit or at a party with your friends or in a restaurant, and they don't want you to make a scene or for you to make them look bad, you could just say something like, you know what? I know you want to get through this, but pretending and smiling feels very heavy and inauthentic to me right now. Can we just sit here for a moment? And this is about honoring your own needs, but also honoring your partner's needs. It's not attacking them or shaming them. It's just being honest to yourself. You don't have to just smile and try to get over the situation right now in that moment. Otherwise, you're abandoning a part of yourself. And if your partner reacts avoidantly, remember when they say things like just smile for the camera, it's usually because they feel overwhelmed or ashamed of themselves. So they're trying to escape the discomfort just by controlling the moment. And this doesn't make an excuse for anyone or for him, but it just makes it a little bit more understandable. So instead of shutting down or pretending it's fine, what would help them is like saying things like, this is hard for me to talk about, but I want to hear you out. Or what does she actually need from me emotionally right now? That is something that he could have done in that moment. And if an avoidant attachment style has been told directly or indirectly that showing feeling makes them weak, and they have learned to perform strength instead of being real and authentic and maybe a little bit vulnerable. So they created this facade, not because they're fake, because they want to manipulate you or control you, but because they're scared as well, scared of being, shown as who they are and being shamed for it and being wrong or flawed. They created this facade but to protect themselves. So they might have carried deep shame that if their partner sees the messy parts and even the public, they reject them and there's something wrong with them and there's something seriously flawed inside of them. So instead of they shutting down, they smile at the fire pit perhaps, or they say nothing and shutting down and like they're completely feeling overwhelmed. But inside they might be, spiraling. So what would help the avoidant attached partner here? Perhaps getting curious about their own stories they tell themselves about who they need to be or what part they have to play here, learning that showing emotions doesn't make them unlovable, or it just makes them human. That conflicts are normal. It's more like how you handle the conflicts is more important. The avoidant attachment partner is really trying to control usually the situation just because they feel so out of control. So it's easy for them rather to say to their partner on how they should behave because they're inside their emotions, they can't manage them yet. They haven't really learned that because they've always been shamed and shut down themselves. So if you are the anxious partner, you might instantly feel they don't care how I feel, they're abandoning me emotionally, you're their fake, I'm alone, they don't care about how I feel, they don't want me to be my authentic self. And if you respond with your full emotions at that point, it can really spike also into shame and make you shut down even more. And I completely get that. So this is why, doing your inner work first is also important. Learning to regulate and set boundaries is so important. Step number 4, how you can break this anxious avoidance cycle, is also start making your relationship your whole identity. Megan gave all of her energy to him. She lost touch of who she more was. She needed that relationship to prove she was enough or lovable and worthy. But if your whole self-worth rides on whether someone chooses you today, they can really break you if things don't turn out the way you want them to be. You're always one mood swing away from emotional collapse. And especially, she said it's Love Island, not Friendship Island. And that is actually quite dangerous. If you are not invested into friendships or other social connections and you're only having all eyes on your partner, who are you going to come to if you have struggles in your relationship, if you have arguments, if your partner would be truly a narcissist or would be actually very toxic? You do need your emotional support system there for you. So it's important to not shut yourself off from any other relationships. So ask yourself, who am I outside this relationship? What parts of me have I abandoned just to feel safe? Where do I need to stop outsourcing my security? So before I wrap this all up, here's a small section of, okay, and I know now finally is the question, okay, but how do I actually know if someone is a narcissist or if he's just avoidant attached? Because I know so many of you have jumped onto the conclusion that D is apparently a narcissist. But the thing is, the most important question is not if your partner or your friend or your family member or D is a narcissist. That is the wrong question. The most important questions are the following, like, do I actually like who my partner is? does he actually treat me well, or she? How does this relationship make you feel? Is this person curious about my feelings and needs, or do they shut down, twist my words, or act like I'm too much or not good enough for them? At least after a few hours or moments, they have regulated themselves. They're able to, be curious about how I feel and meet my needs as well. Are things getting better eventually, and is the needle moving forward, or am I still stuck in the same loops we have been months ago, maybe at the beginning, just after our honeymoon phase? Stuck is not safe. Patterns don't lie. Is there peace in my life with my relationship, or is there more stress and chaos? So are they consistent overall, or are there still hot and cold dynamics? Is it very confusing for you? Because stable energy is very safe energy, period. Do they take accountability and apologize at least occasionally? Because to be fair, no one is perfect. I used to very struggle myself with apologizing, and over time I got better and better at it. So again, these are all just signs. They don't have to follow these checklists, but overall, do they follow some of these? And here are some questions I love to ask my clients as well, if they're not sure about any of this. For example, if your daughter or your little sister or best friend was dating this exact same person or the same pattern, how would you feel about this? Would you be relieved and would give them your best wishes, or very protective AF? Because sometimes we tolerate things in our own lives we would never accept in someone we love. And this would be a huge clue for you. And another thing here, if I would told you with 100% certainty that your dream partner, someone secure and healthy and emotionally safe and growth-minded, and deeply available, would enter into your life, let's say in 3 months or 6 months, would you still cling onto this relationship right now? Or is it only the fear of being alone and fear of no one better is coming that's keeping you stuck in the cycle? Because if only the reason you're staying is because you're scared of what happened if you leave, that's not love, that's survival mode. That's your abandonment wound playing up here. You deserve a love where you don't have to chase crumbs, where your emotions are not too much, where you're enough for someone, where you're not trying to decode text or moods, a love that feels like safety, not suspense. Because in truth, it doesn't matter if someone gets diagnosed with a narcissistic personality disorder, or if they're highly avoidant attached, or if they're even securely attached, or if they're very emotionally unavailable or have been through huge amounts of trauma. Labeling often doesn't help. These questions are much more powerful to ask yourself. Do you actually like them for who they are? Or do you like more the idea of them? And just some final thoughts. No one in this anxious avoidant relationship dynamic is the bad guy, okay? We love to think in black and white thoughts that D is the bad guy and Megan is the one who needs to be saved. But both people are responsible for keeping it going. Both are acting from their own wounds and childhood traumas. So D wasn't responsible for Megan's staying, and Megan wasn't responsible for D's shutting down behaviors. They both needed to learn how to stop seeking safety and control or approval or detachment and start building it from within first, because only then you can come together, because you're already whole and you don't have to fix the other person or yourself. And if you're seeing yourself in Megan or Dee's relationship dynamic, feel free to check out the free resources in the attachment library or to reach out for one-on-one support. I'm really happy to go through with you to either coaching support via text, via phone, or also via bi-weekly one-on-one coaching calls. Because this pattern will keep repeating itself until you heal the deeper fear underneath everything. All right, that's it for now. Share this episode with someone you think might be interested in hearing about it. In the next one, I'll talk about why you keep attracting the same kind of avoidant person even when you swear you're done. Because this is exactly what we're talking about today, but this goes very deep about the why do we keep attaching the same person. So leaving is not always the answer until you've done the inner work. So remember, change in your relationship starts with you. Thought by thought, action by action, and now episode by episode. Lots of love, Yula.